first set up a project folder, then copy and pasted my Sadie and Gladys project files into the new project folder and created a new scene project file that will be the creation of my animation. Then I began importing the characters into my scene as reference. Therefore, I will be able to save space in my project file scene. Then I have created a render camera and adjusted it to suit my preference for rendering my animation. All throughout my process, I've also created more cameras with similar settings to show different shots of the scenes. My group shared the exact character rig files so that we are able to use the same characters to avoid inconsistency. We are also going to do the same for the environment. However, we have yet to complete the environment this week. Our plan is to download the characters and the environment file in our cloud so that we will use them as reference in our Maya animation scene. Therefore, any changes that needs to be made, we can re-download them in the cloud and replace the older version so that we are able to continue animating without having to deal with iterative saves and having to restart animating or any other works we have done. Our group has agreed to find a backpack for Sadie. Therefore, it's my task to look for one and adjust the Sadie rig to include the backpack and make sure that it fits with our simplistic animation style and avoid heavy details. I will be adjusting and improving the look of the silhouettes to have higher fidelity so that the final animation will be increased in its appeal. But later in the week, the idea has been changed to Tony's idea, which is to make the silhouettes 3D shapes. My next challenge is when to keyframe each first pass. I know which first pass to animate since the poses in the 3D rough blocking can be the first pass. However, I was not able to look in depth of the timing and the spacing in between these key poses in the first pass. My plan was to estimate the timing and spacing of each key poses, then I go in depth in analyzing the timing and make a different scene dedicated to planning and adjusting the timing and spacing of the poses. Another challenge that I've faced is the production schedule. I was behind my deadlines that was planned. Therefore, I need to constantly visit back and recreate our production schedule so that our goals will be reasonable. When I was doing my first pass, I was able to properly analyze and detect what keyframe is posed in the first pass by following the slug of form, the storyboard, and align the positioning based off the 3D rough pass, so that I was able to complete the first pass and detect the timing and spacing of each movement the characters make. My next step is to create the second pass. I followed the reference video to understand where the characters' feet are in contact, so that the characters will move in a realistic and believable way, so that the audience easily connects with them and it will give them appeal and follow the principle of solid drawing. During my second pass, while analyzing the video reference, I noticed that the feet were moving in an unrealistic way. This is because the character moves as if there's no weight above his waist. I would have to research further on how to improve this. I continued on with my study material and found a video about how to lip sync by Animation Salvation. I've analyzed the audio clips and followed through his tips and found out things about how my character would move their mouth. Even though I'm not in this stage of the animation process as I'm in the second pass, this helps me to learn about lip syncing properly in animation. After that, I've moved on to continuing animating contact and pass poses in my second pass, and as well as the third pass involving the arc motions. A problem I encountered is how to maintain the character's hands holding, and Sadie holding the walking stick, without having to create so many keyframes that would otherwise muddy the timetable in Maya. An initial solution was to create another animation timeline. However, I tried creating two for the character's face rig controls, and I find that I'm not as familiar with it, so I'll ask my professor of his suggestion so that I will find out what is the best work cycle. I emailed my professor for my passes so that I can get feedback. I figured that I need feedback before I continue going further with my animation, so that the problems I will encounter won't end up having me to undo the time spent on the second and third pass. My next step is to animate the eyes, so I started with animating Sadie's eyelids. In my pre-production schedule, we have analyzed that even though Sadie's blind, she would move her eyelids. Therefore, I will animate the eyelids appropriate to the story beats, such as having her eyes closed in the beginning of the animation as she was crying. According to how to animate, I should also allow Sadie to convey emotions of sadness and happiness even before the dialogue. Therefore, I'll also keyframe animations of Sadie's face so that the audience will expect how she will react and how much Gladys helped her emotionally. I've imported the audio of Sadie's thank you into Maya so that I will be able to see the cue of the speech in the timeline. It will also help me animate the lips so that the movement of the mouth will also sync with the audio. I ran into a complication with Gladys' rig as it doesn't want to keyframe the face animations. Therefore, I continued working on Sadie's lip sync, and I started by drawing thumbnail sketches of her dialogue. Then I updated Sadie's eyes and eyebrows and eyelid movement, and then I moved on to the mouth animation. I play blasted the eye movement and shared it with my group mates for their opinion. They gave a thumbs up, then I continued animating the mouth in more detail. I started by animating the jaws as suggested by Sir Wade Neistat, so that I will be able to block the movement of the mouth. Then I made another iterative save of Sadie moving the side of her lips for squash and stretch. I have made play blasts for both just the jaw movement and the lips squash and stretch. After that, I went into the minimal details of the mouth, such as the movement of the upper lip and the lower lip and the tongue. This is important so that the animation will look more appealing, and the secondary action from the emotions such as the eyes help the character appeal to the audience according to how to animate. I used both thumbnail sketching and myself as reference suggested by Animation Salvation. I tried to troubleshoot Gladys' face along with the help of my professor, but we couldn't figure out the issue with Gladys' face as to why his face wouldn't animate. And I realized I was too late in changing the animation layers when animating Sadie and Gladys, since all their animations are in one layer. By trying to extract them from the base animation, their joints won't move. Therefore, I would have to rely on the display selection layers that I have made at the beginning of the animation scenes, rather than using animation layers, since that is already too late. My professor has criticized that I've completely neglected the character's backs and the lack of line of action. My classmate has also pointed out how Sadie sits down. Therefore, I would have to fix up a majority of animation keyframes. A feedback I received additionally were to fix clipping, improve the way they get up by bending back forward more when getting up. Sadie also needs to tuck in her body more and avoid feet sliding for the Sadie model. Gladys, when kneeling, needs his knee to touch the floor, and Sadie needs her front leg more to be moved forward more when she gets up. I keyframed Sadie to hold her standing position more. I also tried to animate Sadie to fumble around before she grabbed onto Gladys. This is because Sadie is blind, and Gladys helping her to grab onto his arm and his to her arms, since it helps them to get up more easily. This is possible due to them leaning in because I positioned their backs in an arc. Then I moved to animating the face of Gladys before I proceeded with refining the movements. Even when animating Sadie's face, I've already taken notes on the mouth movement when they speak. I've created thumbnail sketches for Gladys so that I'll be able to reference it for animating the face. Since the problem of the audio won't be heard in the play blasts, rather than dwelling in the time in it, I moved on to complete the animation in preparation for my final class. I then asked for feedback once again. My group mate suggested to fix Sadie's leg as it sometimes breaks, and fix Gladys's hips and knees, especially the knees, because sometimes the knees bend inward as they have noticed. After that, I've applied the feedback, then I will make the cane move, so that my next step is to keyframe the cane movements, and I will try my best to sync with Sadie's hand movements. This is challenging, especially because this is during the time when their hands are still in forward kinematics. Therefore, I don't have much control with the hands as I would have had later on.
Here we go.
After I've keyframed the cane, I will finally animate the hands. First, I will create an animation layer if it's still possible. However, the animation layers once again wouldn't work. Therefore, my only option left is to use another display layer so that the finger layers are easily selected for a keyframe timeline animation. A challenge I faced was how Gladys will hold Sadie. This is because Gladys' hand keeps clipping into Sadie. This is also challenging when Gladys is also holding the cane. Even more challenging than Sadie since his hand is more sporadic and his hands move a lot as he lets go of the cane later on. Then I began to finalize my renders. First, I've included the building so that I would understand how the lighting in the scene works. My group mate has added the lighting for the background already. Therefore, I would only have to adjust the lighting based off the story beats. However, I faced an issue that my laptop takes very long time to render. Therefore, I will have to continue my work in Canvas. This includes planning the lighting. I've decided to add tangents to my animation by splitting the keyframes in the graph editor. Therefore, I made more saved scenes. I've also followed through the materials of week 12 and followed the tips and advices to make the play blasts more appealing by splining the tangents. I notice when I add tangents, the feet sinks into the floor, therefore I must make some curves linear in the graph editor so that the feet won't sink in the floor. The same issue is for the cane, and I even have to redo some keyframes. Then I went into rendering the shots as a play blast and adding the audio. After that, I went to class and waited for my feedback. The general feedback from my classmates and peers is that I need to make the contacts more organic. I need to work on the hand poses, especially when they are holding together, and have Gladys gently tug on Sadie when they are moving. This is because the animation I've made so far is not as convincing as it should be. On frame 9, Gladys' knee and his right arm breaks, and there needs to be a clearer silhouette as the hands are crossing each other, and the same goes for Sadie's hands, as they also clip. On frame 22, I need to make Gladys hold on to Sadie's right hand in a convincing manner. This is because it looks like his hand is floating above Sadie. I should also make Gladys look at the cane, and I need to frame the cane into the scene because the audience doesn't understand what Gladys is doing. On frame 27, the hand is clipping on Sadie and all the hands look flat. On frame 40, Gladys shouldn't let his feet slide. On frame 44, the rotation of the neck needs to be slightly on the left so that it doesn't look like Gladys' neck is breaking. On frame 100 to 108, Sadie is bending back too far as if she's tugging Gladys forward too much. On frame 115 to 119, I need to hold Gladys' eyes onto Sadie. I also need to improve Gladys' turnaround and have his foot lead the hips. A suggestion from my professor is to put 3 frames of the foot in front of the shoulders and arms. Another suggestion is to push the hips forward so that his balance is at the left leg. On frame 126, I need to keep their hands holding each other. This will definitely be challenging, and if it's necessary, I need to compromise in some ways, such as rather than keeping his hands holding each other and risk stretching Gladys' arms too far, I would have to shorten the stretch by having their fingertips in contact still even though they are no longer holding hands. This could also be in character as Sadie is hesitant whether to trust Gladys or not. On frame 120 to 163, Gladys' vacant arm moves too rigidly and is toy-like when they were walking. The shot also needs to be in full frame to see the character's whole body. I also need to prevent Gladys' eyes from moving too far from the visible sclera, as if his eyes are crossing. Gladys' legs are also snapped here, and I need to improve the finger posing. And on frame 170, I need to reposition the camera so that Sadie's face is the main focus, and I need to keep Gladys from turning away from Sadie. In a way, our expression will share with Gladys, and therefore we, the audience, are connected to the animation according to the feedback given. To make animating the hands easier, I've had a go with converting the hands from forward kinematics to inverse kinematics. Then suddenly the wrist rotates around and I tried to use the Euler filter, but it didn't work either. I considered the fact that this was because I've converted the wrist from forward kinematics to inverse kinematics. When I went back to continuing the work, I changed my mind regarding the forward kinematics and inverse kinematics. Instead, I will keep the wrist as an inverse kinematics all throughout the animation, so that not only I won't have to worry about the wrist twisting, but also it makes it easier for me to animate Gladys holding onto Sadie. However, I was able to maintain the forward kinematics and the conversion to inverse kinematics by trying to prevent Gladys from stretching arms too far. By doing this, I need to make sure the elbows are bent first before going onto the timeline and changing Gladys' hands from forward kinematics to inverse kinematics. For Gladys' inverse kinematic hands, I've keyframed every 5 to 10 frames so that Gladys will continuously hold onto Sadie, and I've made sure so that when Gladys picks up Sadie, his hands are holding onto her arm, as suggested by the feedback. I've also animated every 5 to 10 frames when Gladys is holding onto the cane. After that, I've applied the feedback from all my classmates. My next step is to fix Sadie's hands so that they are believable and feels connected rather than feeling as if Sadie's hands are floating. I feel like the best thing to do is to convert the hands from forward kinematics to inverse kinematics once she holds onto the things such as the cane and Gladys' arm. Similar to how I've keyframed Gladys' hand, I will keyframe every 5 to 10 frames of Sadie holding onto the cane. I've also deleted keyframes of the fingers when the hand is turned into inverse kinematics so that I can freely animate the hands without having any animation glitches. Then I realized by deleting them, the hand started to move in an unorthodox way. Therefore, my plan is to move the last keyframe before being deleted into the timeline before the hand is turned from forward kinematics to inverse kinematics. I've also fixed the floating foot issue when Sadie was standing up. This issue was found in the feedback seen on the June 3rd. Another thing I've realized was that the cane is clipping into Gladys's foot. Therefore, not only I have to worry about the hand movements, but I must also relocate the cane so that it would collide into Gladys. The same is for Sadie. Therefore, I must consider the shape of Sadie's arms and hands so that they wouldn't look broken or twisted due to the arm extending too far to grab the cane, and neither should her hand clip into the cane. While animating Gladys's hand holding the cane, there are some parts where the hand is clipping. I tried fixing it, however this would mean that I would have to animate it once, which will make the movement janky. Therefore my solution is to make the hand look like it's holding the cane by compromising some clipping and making sure it's not obvious. Another thing I need to fix is Sadie's hand when holding onto Gladys. I'll do the same process I've made for Sadie's hand, involving converting keyframing of her hand from forward kinematics to inverse kinematics, and animating it in 5s to 10s. After that, I've completed animating Sadie's hand to sync with the cane. Then I've decided to follow up in the feedback regarding Gladys's facial expressions. This because he needs to act alongside Sadie so that it doesn't look like he's a completely different scene. Therefore, I started with his facial expression of standing up, since there needs to be an expression of him picking up Sadie with effort. This because of the feedback I've received from my classmates. After that, I've animated Sadie's smile and made sure that her smile should come out sooner. Therefore, I've keyframed the smile sooner so that the audience is able to process her emotions. After that, I began to make some finishing touches, including rendering and finalizing the background for rendering. Throughout this animation process, I've learned technical skills involving how to use different 3D model rigs, how to reference them, and how to meet professional standards in animation. I've also learned aspects of teamwork as this animation was made in a group effort by the three of us, and also learning how to make our animation appealing through feedback and through the weekly material. Though this assessment is due on the 8th of June, this animation is a part of the WA Animators Competition 330, and its due date is on the 30th of June. Therefore, the final outcome of this animation may be different compared to the animation submitted. Thank you.